been able to get out of the garden, you know.
You in Newcastle, is that right? Are they based in
Yeah,
Newcastle?
yeah, just over the river. So I'm in Gateshead there in Newcastle, and I get to like work with real people now rather than work fully remote. But yeah, we do sales coaching as a subscription, and yeah, team are great, really small team, but they're fantastic, and I'm loving it.
Congrats. Who are your prospects? Tell us who you sell to and see, like, let's see if we can get you a deal while we're on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, should I? Yeah, I'll bring it all up. Right, let me click some buttons.
Okay, so we are on the hour, so we should kick off. And on that note, maybe we should just kick off some really quick introductions. I'll start. Obviously, my name's Aaron Evans. I'm one of the co-founders of Flow State. My role is really simple here today, is just to kind of poke and prod, maybe shine some torches in the recesses of these three guest brains, and actually maybe play a little bit of devil's advocate as well. That's one of the roles that I want to take today. I want to kind of stretch this to its limits because, as I said before, there is so much noise about outreach and about outbound out there at the moment. It is really hard, I think, for reps to trust what's genuine and what's not. So I'm really pleased to have you three here to give us your expert insights because it's something that you live and breathe in your roles as well. So Jen, why don't you kick us off and give us your little introduction?
Yeah, so I'm Jen Allen-Knuth. My nickname and the name of my company is Demand Gen with a J. Aaron and I actually first met back when you had, I mean, I know you're a longtime fan of like Brent Adamson and Matt Dixon and all those folks. I spent about 18 years working for the company behind Challenger in a frontline selling role. Left that, went to Lavender for a bit, where they obviously score cold emails and have a ton of data on what helps or hurts reply rates. And then I started this little business about a year ago, training and working with teams on sort of the front end of the sales process. And so excited to be here with three of my favorite people.
Brilliant. And if you don't follow Jen, make sure you follow her as soon as you leave this session and all the other guests as well. Her insight is absolutely brilliant and she's had a great career as well. So, Tom, you're the next one on my screen. So we'll jump over to you.
Yeah, so my name is Tom Boston. I am an accidental influencer. That's how I like to talk about it. I used to work in sales, started making content. Next thing I know, I'm in marketing. So I'm on the marketing team. At my sales coach, we do sales coaching as a subscription. And to echo the love in the room, I've interviewed all these three people, and they are insightful and delightful.
Oh, wonderful. Nice to kick us off with a little bit of poetry as well, mate. I really appreciate that. Over to you, Sam.
Hi. Hi, you guys. So excited to be here. And Aaron, I have to tell you, Todd Capone was waxing poetic over text message about you today and just how much he adores you. So you've definitely got a little bromance going with him. I'm Sam McKenna. I've been in sales for 3 days, so I'm really excited to talk to you guys about my experience. In sales for 15, 16 years, worked in corporate America a long time, was at LinkedIn before starting Sam Sales, and we're a sales consultancy and build brands for executives on LinkedIn as well. And we are an all-women team, whoop whoop, of almost 20 people. So really proud of that. Sorry, gentlemen, you guys are lovely, but I'm pretty excited about it. Over here. So that's us. That's us in a nutshell.
Awesome. And now you're introduced, let's kind of jump into the topic of today. And I want to kind of kick us off by maybe doing a little bit of diagnosis because I think the last statistic I read on this was pretty scary. If we look at email outreach as an example, I think email's gone up by 70% over the last 4 years, yet response rates have dipped by 30%. I don't know whether your inboxes are anything like mine, but they're basically a graveyard where outreach goes to die. And even when I get good outreach, it's really hard to discern because it's just populated with garbage as well. Um, how do we get to this point? And I want to be sympathetic because sometimes this isn't about the salesperson. Sometimes this is about the organization demanding that we do these really effective things of pumping out a billion emails. But how did we get to this point? Who wants to kick us off? Why are we in this state when it comes to cold outreach?
Tom, you worked at SalesLoft, so I think you've got like maybe a good perspective on like how your customers worked with you guys. Where do you think your old customers, where do you think we went wrong? I mean, right.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? I think that over the past few years, with the increase of like regulations, and they've got the kind of cold call reluctance that we see now with a lot of kind of sellers, email for the people that I've been working with is like a an easy option, right? Especially in the world of AI, where we can pretty much put that together in 10 seconds, right? Um, the rejection on email doesn't hurt as much as the rejection on a call.
Speak for yourself, Tom.
You don't have to put yourself out there. It's all text form, and it's something that I've done as a seller, right? It's like the easy option. You can do it on mass.
Mhm.
Um, it's almost like that pray and spray, hope for the best. But I think that's why we've got there, right? It's that kind of thing of like it's the easiest thing for me to do right now to reach a lot of people very quickly.
It's the path of least resistance, right? Is that putting together a 10-second email and sending it out is far easier than building up the courage to have a conversation with a prospect. Or in some cases, like the three of you, actually take the time and effort to build a personal brand online where you become an authority where the customer wants to come to you versus constantly having to reach out to the customer. Jen, anything you'd add on this topic?
Yeah, I think, if I'm being honest, I think for most of us, when you start off in an entry level sales role and then you move up into AE, the very first thing you can't wait to get rid of is prospecting
Mm.
and doing cold outreach. And you're like, oh, no, no, that's the SDR job or that's marketing's job. And so I think largely what's happened is we've pushed what, in my opinion, is the most difficult and most important part of the sales process, which is earning an executive's time, getting someone to go from I'm okay to maybe I'll take a look. And we push it down to the people that we give the least training, the least business acumen, the least enablement to. And then we beat them over the head when they don't hit an activity number that, frankly, like a lot of AEs probably wouldn't be able to hit if we asked them to. And so I think largely we have sort of looked at prospecting as this less than activity. And as a result, we put people who just aren't equipped to do the job well into a position where they have to do a lot of it. And so what are they going to do? Well, exactly like Tom said, they're going to spray and they're going to pray because my logic is if I just hit enough people, surely a bullet will hit a bullet and I'll hit my number. And I think that is a disservice not only to future sales talent, but it's a disservice to our customers who don't want their inbox full of product like BS.
Mm.
And then you go and you ask these reps, right? You decide that prospecting is important, like everybody's doing. We should go back to full cycle sales reps,
Mhm.
which a lot of us have done our entire lives, right? Like we're not letting somebody else decide whether or not we're going to be successful. We're saying like, okay, I have $1 million quota. This is the ACV. This is how many things it takes, 20% close rate, pop, pop, pop. Here's what I need to do to be able to make that successful. But a lot of leaders are saying, okay, well, now we know you have to do that. Go prospect. And the
Yeah.
reps are like, cool, how? Right. So they've been part of disruptive technologies. They've been sales ops, outreaches of the world. They've been at the gongs of the world where like it was just inbound, right? They
Yeah.
were order takers to a degree. And so now we're like, go and find all these people. Ooh, ooh, and do it at the enterprise level. Ooh, ooh. And we also want you to do it in 4 weeks. Cool, cool, cool.
Yeah.
How do I do that? First of all, insane expectations. Second of all, how do I do that? And I think a couple of things. We continue to rely on volume because volume is king. If just as Jen said, right, if we just go out at some point, somebody's going to respond. We're scared and we're not understanding how to actually do quality over quantity. And so, how do we instead send 50 emails that are maybe not to the director that we typically go to, but to their manager or a skip level or a skip level, right? Go up because I'll tell you, for all of us that look at our inboxes, or if you look at your inbox and you say, well, mine's not so bad, just go to your spam, as Jen posts about, just go to your spam and check it out, and you'll see it's a hot mess. And that's what we see every day. So instead, you take those executives who get insane amounts of emails every single day and you just make an effort. You do what we talk about, which is personalize, actually authentically personalize. Write them a subject line that makes no sense and get an open, but focus on quality instead of quantity. I think people are afraid to do that, first of all. And then, second of all, they kind of hide behind traditional metrics. So maybe it's email, maybe it's smile and dialing 100 times a day. And what's great, I say that sarcastically, about that is that if you hide behind those numbers and then your company or your team doesn't hit your numbers, you can say, we're doing what's always worked, right? Must be you, must be the environment, must be product market fit, must be something else because it sure as hell isn't us. Where we really need to think about what works today, right? It's challenging to survive in this market, but we can't keep doing the same shit we always did. We have to change.
I think, and I always get accused of being too harsh on SaaS, but I think SaaS has poisoned the well a little bit with this, which was, basically to your point, just prioritize efficiency over effectiveness. So if you're seen to be doing 1,000 things, then guess what? You're doing something. You're running on the spot, but you're not actually getting anywhere. There's a load of action happening, but not a lot of outcome happening. The other thing which I think is quite interesting is that the rate at which SaaS promotes people to management, I think there might be a skill gap with managers now, and we've lost
No.
lost a lot of IP over the last 5 or 10 years, where a manager would work in the role for a long time and then manage for 5, 10 years, and they pass on this knowledge and this really valuable insight and experience onto the rep. And the rep isn't getting that from the manager anymore, so they don't know what good looks like across the organization. And again, not being too harsh on SaaS, but this is a SaaS problem: is that a manager lasts for 11 months on average in a SaaS organization. That's not enough time to manage. Is it this? I want to go back to this doing it right. Do businesses have the patience now to say, let's get off the hamster wheel a little bit? Let's forget about 1,000 calls and 10 billion emails that we're sending out through these spam cannons. Let's learn how to do it right and then scale it once we've got it right. Do you guys in your practices see this happening, or is this like, is it tough to get a rep to do that and go kind of ignore the metrics and let's get it right first?
I think it's tough to get the leaders to do it. I think the
Mm,
reps actually want to do it. And all of the clients that I've worked with this year, there has been one client who said, instead of giving them a really high activity target, we actually shrunk it down and said, every week you get, I forget what the exact number, 20 or 30 accounts that you can go after. And you don't get your number raised until you can prove that you can crack into those 20. And I just was like in awe. I'm like, I've never heard another company doing that, but it makes so much sense because you earn the right to scale instead of starting with scale and then hoping that pays off.
yeah, spot on. Absolutely spot on. Tom, you're nodding so vigorously. I think your head's about to fall off your shoulders. Go on over to
Well,
you.
I'm just such a big believer in, measuring those non-traditional things. And it's like, I think it's the future, right, of sales. I really do. In my career, no one ever asked me how many prospects have you made smile this week, right? Because that's not doesn't mean anything, does it? But actually, with relationship building, when you call them in 3 weeks' time, you know what? That metric's really, really important. And actually, you know, raising a smile and finding common ground, showing that you're human, like all these things that we don't care about really, and well, especially if you're an early stage rep, you just want to hit your target, right? Actually, those things I think are the future. Especially in the world of AI and automation, like actually standing out, actually having a human to human connection. These things we don't measure. Oh man, this gets me fired up because I think this is what we should be measuring.
Can I dig a bit deep on that, Tom? Because this is a really important point. Because I mean, if you read like Gerald Zaltman or even someone like Rory Sutherland, there's a belief that 95% of purchasing is actually emotional, and that 5% is actually a retroactive rationality. And most of the outreach I get is like, increase your ROI by 65%, and like click through to this. How do you actually do that though? For me, the thing you're saying about being a human being, for the people watching, listening to this and watching this, what does that actually look like? What does that mean? Because you're really good at it. Like I find myself chuckling away to the stuff that you post online. But what does it actually mean?
Yeah, I think it's twofold, right? So it's having a product or service that's interesting, and that's really important, right? Especially as you think about your career, right? Really, you want to get behind what you've got to sell. I really do believe that. But it's also being an interesting person, right? Because you can't just rely on what you've got to sell. You've got to be the person that brings that story to life. And, a lot of sellers, they don't really care about being an interesting person. I just want to get my commission. Thank you very much, Tom. Well, actually, if long term, if you want to do this as a career, then showing that you're worth 15 minutes of someone's time, being an interesting person and having the ability to bring to life your product or service, that's like invaluable. And I think the way that you do it is you lead with authenticity. I'm going to use some buzzwords here. You, you show that you actually believe in what you sell. And again, not all of us are lucky enough to be able to be selling something they can believe in. I started selling utilities, gas and electricity, right? But I still got behind it. Let me tell you that
Sexy.
I still got behind it and I still made it fun because actually that's how you are successful. And I think it's so important to kind of have that mindset.
I think a couple of things I think that are important. So one, taking one step back, right? Like who's doing this wrong? Is it the leaders? Is it the reps? What do we do? I think one of the challenges we have is that a lot of organizations don't know where to start in terms of fixing the 4,800 problems that they have across their go-to-market function. And so one of the pieces of advice we always talk about is you have to think about the things that happen every single day, dozens and hundreds of times a day. You have to think about the way we prospect, the way we send emails, the way we show up to a discovery call. People come to us and they're like, oh, like, let's talk social selling. And we're like, well, how are your prospecting, efforts? And they're like, oh, it's shitty, but talk to us about social selling. And we're like, wait, like that's later, right? It's like talking about how to fix your fourth date when you can't nail the first date. We have to nail that first date, right? So I think that's one of the most important things. What's happening every day that's broken? And I think this even goes back to like the way that your marketing team works with the sales team. I'm just going to say it. We secret shopped for a revenue leader the other day for rippling, and I clicked an ad on Instagram, went through the process, never got the BDR, never followed up, then followed up with questions, then never followed up again with the answers over and over. And finally, I was like, "Do you want to book a meeting with us?" And they're like, "Can I get on a call to ask you more questions?" Third time they were asking me additional questions, and I'm like, "No."
Mm,
People want, like, we would love to buy rippling, right? Like people want to buy your stuff and we're making it so difficult. So you need to think about that baseline stuff first. Tom's point's so important about authenticity too, and Jen talks about this all the time as well. But it sounds easy, right? Like be authentic. For basically, if you're 35, 34 years of age and back, having conversations is a completely different skill set than those of us who are 35 years and up, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's just generational differences in how we communicate, right? For most of those Gen Zs and then lower millennials, we're talking, no cap, that's right, Philip. We're just looking at the chat. We're talking about how we exchange information. And for those individuals, we talk at each other to exchange information. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how we are. So I'm like, Jen, I had a sandwich for lunch. And then I stare at you. And then Jen's like, oh, does that mean you want to know what I had for, I had soup for lunch. So when you think about it, we're then asking our reps to get on calls and be like good active listeners, ask open-ended questions, probe and poke. And they're like, yeah, I don't do that in my normal life. And how the hell do I do that now?
mm,
For a lot of people, also being authentic and sharing things or asking questions about, the background that somebody has or whatever feels invasive. Like they don't know that it's totally okay. If the person's sharing it in your Zoom, talk about it, right? You
mm,
want to talk about corporate bro? We totally can. I've got a doll of him back here. Ask anything you want. But I think we have to think about those soft skills as well, which I think a lot of companies aren't even focused on.
I agree. I
Yeah,
totally agree.
I'll stop
Yeah.
yelling now.
No, no, no. It's really insightful. One thing that's been jumping up quite a lot on this, and I'm guessing this is it feels like a bit of a buzzword when I read about it, but it's also super super crucial and important. Is this concept of personalization? I think we've lost a bit of that. I mean, again, I keep saying back in the day, but you'd go and meet someone at a conference, and now like LinkedIn's become a digital conference. You get to know them, and then you'd send them a message, and it'd be relevant to what you'd spoken to them about, or what you know about their organization, or what you know about a contact you had in common. Nowadays, personalization is just sort of like, oh, you've got hair, I've got hair too. How amazing. Should we jump on a call and like book in a meeting? And we all know that personalization is really important. But when you've got someone going, right, I need you to put 1,000 emails out today and also make sure they're really personalized because we know that that works, that seems really incongruent to me. Let's talk a
Yeah.
bit about this personalization. What does it look like in the world of a seller who's either making cold calls or sending out emails or outreaching over LinkedIn? What does that actually look like in 2024?
I'm going to say two things real quick. Mark Costaglo, for many of you who know him, just wrote a great post about this and just this morning. So go and take a look at his. I would say just one key point. We are using AI, right, in like such a phenomenal way, but we're using it, I think, in the wrong way for emails. And I call them scaled and veiled, right? It makes it look like you did your research. It tries to authentically connect with you. There's a guy that's badgering Sam Sales and saying, I'll bet you $1,000 that the email I send you with AI is indistinguishable from the email you send using Show Me You Know Me. And we're like, we're not entertaining it, but also kind of game on. But I think the thing that we do with that, so we saw a great one, a great AI one that talked about Taylor Swift. Saw somebody went to the Eras tour, posted on LinkedIn, talked about Taylor, did a PS. By the way, if this is your favorite song, we have to talk about the bridge. Beautifully done. However, it's complete AI. So let's say the person responds and says, can't wait to meet. And then they get on with a rep who can't stand, I mean, who are you, but can't stand Taylor Swift. And that buyer says, like, oh my God, we have to talk about her bridge. And the rep says, what? think about what that means to your brand. You are tricking, you are deceiving your buyers. Like, why would you want to be that person? And what happens when that person realizes, like, oh shit, I totally got had by AI? To me, personalization, again, you can make an effort by going skip level. Don't go to the same person. If that SVP or EVP is part of your buying circle, at some point, just put your big girl panties on and go to that person, as scary as it is. Do your research, find something that you would talk to them about at a conference if you had to make small talk, right? There's much more that goes in that email, but that's the piece of personalization. Don't just treat them like somebody with wallet share. They're human beings at the end of the day. Okay, Jen, I know you talk about this a lot. I'm going to pass to you.
Yeah, over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, I think because AI can do this easily, this is a, example number 10,000 of us jumping on an easy button. So I can scrape something off of your LinkedIn profile. So now I'll write my first line and it'll be like, wow, I actually got this one. And I always talk about this one. So if you've heard it, I'm sorry, but I got this one from one of these like AI scraping technologies. And it was like, wow, you demand excellence here at Demand Gen. And we're so impressed with your journey of sales. It reminds me of another Jen Shaw, who had a conviction for, she was a convicted criminal that was on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And so they go on this whole tangent
Was
and
that the
then go
fake
into,
bags girl?
no, it was the
No.
one who was like conning old people. And
Oh,
then they went
yes.
down further in the email and were like, and as you sit back on this cool 60-degree Fahrenheit day in Chicago, I wonder, might we and I'm like, this is just
It's too much.
exactly why we shouldn't do it. So just because we can doesn't mean we should. And how it often reads is, hey, let me check the personalization box because I know I'm supposed to do it. But anyway, back to me. So it's like that pivot between the first line. So one I get a lot because I post a lot about rescue dogs. It's a personal passion of mine is like, oh, I loved your dog post. Anyway, we're the leading provider of CRMs. And I'm just like, this is worse than just shooting me straight. Like, I'd rather you just come in straight with we're the leading provider. And so
Yeah.
I think with personalization, we should never be looking at how can we do it quickly. We should be looking at how can we do it sincerely, authentically, and how do we tie it back to the reason we're in their inbox to begin with. And I think that is a skill. I don't care if you're an SDR, an AE, a manager, a leader, a CRO. I think it's a skill we all need to get better at because we are leaning way too heavily on a lot of this automated technology, in my opinion.
Someone's just Jules has just put in the in the chat, and it's a really good point. And I want to talk about this. And before we move on to what does work and what you see in your practices as well, is that he said something quite interesting. He said email doesn't work, or emails don't work, I should say, no matter how personalized AI or otherwise. Now, I'm not saying this is true, and I think I think it's a good point for some people because some people don't like email, but that we have flooded this channel, right? And even if you, as to my point before, even if you have written the greatest personalized email ever, it can get lost in the noise. And it feels like it's becoming more and more a channel that we need to earn the right to come into. Like it feels at the moment it's the equivalent of just walking into someone's front door because they're so used to being invaded through email. Let's play devil's advocate with this. Is email dead as a channel for outbound for outreach from a cold position?
I
Tom,
see
I'm
go.
a deep breath
Yeah.
from Tom.
I
I
He's
saw
like
that.
adjusting, preparing for his comments.
like, I was like, am I just gonna say yes, it is? And I think I am, Um, I can't think of an email I've ever received in my career that's kind of blown me away. And I've also never sent an email that's blown anyone away. Um, I've emailed someone content, right, and said, "Hey, I think you'll like this."
Mm.
Or I've emailed someone and said, "Hey, I left you a voicemail earlier on." I've thrown them around my other outreach, but yeah, I even with even with the amazing AI and the scoring, right? This email is 100, couldn't be any better. In my opinion, you'd be much better off just sending someone a piece of original content that you've created and asking them for their opinion, start a conversation.
Mm. Interesting. So it's this kind of, and obviously this kind of give before you get, is that I'm not going to come and intrude straight away and say, hey, here's a link to my Calendly, book in an hour with me, and I'll talk to you for 45 minutes and give you a heavily discounted product offering at the end. It's about actually let's build a relationship first, and then we can see if there's a way we can have mutual benefit to one another. And not saying that, just to be clear, as well, not going, hey, let's build a relationship first and see how we can mutually benefit one another. Sam, what's your perspective on this?
I think that sales is always going to be multi-channel, but I think it's just like it's that we do emails so wrong. I don't think they're dead. I think they're really effective. I think you just need to consider just some basic data and logic. So like one of the tips that we give, right, is to always send all of your well-researched emails on Thursday and Friday. Data shows, right, that your second email should then go out less than 48 hours later, not 24 hours, like slow your roll, like 42, 44 hours, something like that, but then it goes on a Saturday or Sunday. Open rates will pop if you think about a funky subject line, but you might not get a response. You might on email too because you're sending it on the weekend. Do the stuff that other people don't do. Take the time to research, send a well thought out email, create a really wonderful piece of content. But we need to think about how we catch someone's attention to even get that content, right? Seen, rather. I think one of the important things too is just the content of the email. So, read your email, and I would ask you two things, and Jen is such an expert at this as well, but look at your email and two questions. Does it say what you do, or does it say what the challenge is that we work with CROs just like you, and one of the common things that they're focused on is this, and here's a specific way that we solve it. If it says that, you're in much better shape. If it says what you do, here's the other question. Can you take exactly what you wrote, lift it, and drop it in your competitors, right? So if I worked for Sam Sales and I said, we're a leading trading company and we can teach you how to do this, so is everybody else. There's 100,000 of us like us out there in theory. So what's different about what the email structure is in there? We also just talk about the idea of timing, right? So the weekend timing and multi-channels. So when do you use LinkedIn and how do you use that? Think about how you can send like your third or fourth connection attempt, right? In your sequence or your cadence should be a connection request on LinkedIn. My name might look familiar. I've sent you a lot of content. I'd be grateful for, appreciative of the chance to chat. Don't say I'd love to because everybody will think probably what I do, which is like, I bet you would delete. Right. So instead, use words that kind of sucker people into taking time with you. I'd be grateful for, like the cat in Shrek with the giant eyes. Do that and make them say like, fine. But if you're already first degree connected to a lot of your buyers, consider timing. Like go bubble hunting on the weekend. See when their little green bubbles are filled in on LinkedIn. Go at night, wake up early one morning if you're West Coast or whatever it is. Like go and find times where they're less distracted, but they're catching up. Leave the office at Friday at 12 o'clock and then work 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday morning.
Mm.
Work smarter, not harder. There's all these different things you can do.
Jen, over to you.
Yeah, two things. So one, I would never want to kill any channel, right? The job is hard enough. Why cut one of our legs off? I think it's important to first consider what is the prospect's job? Like, are they sitting at their computer all day long? Are they out in the field doing service repairs? Like, that should always be our guiding light as to what is the best means of communication to reach them. And we have to be careful about assuming our own preferences. Like, because I don't like cold email, my prospects don't like it either. Like I've picked up one cold call in my entire life. I would never tell someone not to cold call because there are plenty of sellers booking meetings off it. So that's one. Number two, I think it comes down, and I totally agree with Sam here. It comes down to like what we are actually doing in the email. So the analogy I use a lot of times is like, if you've ever gone to a shopping mall, as I hope I don't lose you two with, you guys go to shopping malls, right? You go to shopping
Yeah,
malls.
I still do.
Okay.
It's my mothership. Go on.
We just call shop, we
So
just call it shops as well over here, but yeah, go on, carry on.
okay, so in a shopping mall in America, you've got these mall kiosks, and
The
it's like these
shops.
people in the center of the mall, and they're always selling stuff nobody wants, like phone cases or Rosetta Stone. No shade against Rosetta Stone, but just stuff you're not going to the mall to buy. And when you walk by it, you avoid eye contact because you know what's going to happen. Someone, the second you show some like life in your eyes, they're gonna be like, "Hey, can I ask you a quick question?" And then you're in this terrible position where now you have to get out of it. And so in many ways, I think we all as human beings can agree we hate that. But yet, when we send cold emails, that's the narrative we're putting in there. My name is Jen, and I noticed this about you, and we do this, and we do it better than everybody else. And do you have a quick 15 minutes? Like, ick, ew, no, I don't, and I don't ever want to. So, that, in my opinion, is dead. But one of the stats that really changed my thinking around what I'm doing in cold emails came out from Gartner. Aaron, you probably have seen this, that was talking about how much time the buyer is spending across the buying process. And it showed that 83% of it was spent without sellers. And it's
Yeah.
basically learning. Like it's learning the Googling online, like we would if we were going to buy a car. It is talking to others in the buying group. It is having conversations at events and in Slack communities and things like that. And then, and only then, when they've shaped what they think they need, now they're contacting the seller. Well, of course, a message completely designed around here's what we do and why it's great is not going to hit a buyer who's still in that sort of problem development zone. So in my opinion, like we have to be much more creative around what can I add to that buyer's learning journey about the problem, about their own business? What can I offer there before I ever start talking about my solution? So
Yeah.
do I know how this other company over here, what the three things that they tried, which two didn't work and which one did? Why don't I offer a conversation about that? Because now I'm actually aiding them in their learning process. So
Yeah, it's such a
long,
good
long way
point.
of saying it, but I think that's why we have to think differently about how we've classically used cold email. Nobody likes ads in their inbox. That's not going to change.
Yeah, it's such a brilliant point, and someone actually raised it earlier in the chat. And thank you for your really insightful chat. Some good conversation bubbling in there as well. Someone said that we've got to meet the buyer where they are in their journey, and this for me is probably the most important point, which is I think HubSpot released a statistic which is about 3% of your addressable market is ready to buy right now. About 17% of it is going, well, we've got a problem, we probably should be solving it. The rest of it doesn't even understand that they have a problem. They've got an unrecognized need. Yet our approach is, as a seller, is that, well, I need to get you in my pipeline as quick as possible. So do you want to meet up and talk to me so I can get you in my pipeline? It's like, no, 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 no. There's a really complex, difficult, and becoming increasingly more entangled process that the buyer is going through that is getting longer, it's involving more people, that's getting more complex. And we're sitting there going, oh, just talk to us now. That's not what the buyer needs. The buyer needs someone to sit there and go, look, I've seen people go through what you're going through a million times before. And there's a couple of classic things that get in the way. Do you want to just sit down and talk about what some of those things are? Because at very least, we might be able to help you on that journey. Now, there's an interesting statistic that I want to bring up, which is a new statistic, which is every single person in this room here now is here by virtue of something called LinkedIn. So I only know about the three of you because of LinkedIn. Everyone who's joined here probably has joined up because of something that we posted on LinkedIn. This feels to me to be the most underutilized channel in selling in 2024. My perspective, I'll give you mine and I'll chuck it out to you, is that it's a bit like going to the gym. I'd love to turn up, do 20 crunches, and then have a six pack and a beach ready body. But unfortunately, I've got to sit there for 6 months, eating right, sleeping right, watching what I do, going to the gym every day to get there. And I can't be bothered to do that. And it feels a bit like, not necessarily sellers, but this is what organizations are saying, which is that social selling stuff takes too long. Generate some leads now. Go and put a million emails out. Go and put a million calls out. But we know that social selling works. Why are we not doing this as prevalently as we should be?
No attribution. Where's the attribution? I can't see that these leads directly came in from this efforts and the people will just spend their day all day building brands. That's what we hear a lot, right? And I think there's a couple shortcuts to that, right? But I think one, Jen's so right about the learning process, right? And I want to just go back to one thing you quickly said, Aaron, like why don't we sit down? Like, why don't I talk to you about some things that we're hearing, et cetera, help educate you? That's even just a great response when you hear people who say, we'll evaluate this in the new year, right? Like, we'd love to talk to you, probably not until February. How many reps say, cool, talk to you then?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead, you can say, like, do you want to run through some things? Can I offer some perspective? Can I tell you what other clients like? Get that time, teach them, have a chance to show them exactly what they should be thinking about. Give them food for thought. That's learning alongside you. I think the LinkedIn channel, like one shortcut you can do, and like shameless self promotion for us, but like get your executives speaking on LinkedIn, right? Tom, Jen, and I, Aaron, we can all talk about the fact that we just broadcast our thoughts, some great, some not so great on my end, where we go broadcast our thoughts about everything that we think about sales, right? Or marketing or leadership or whatever it may be. And we get people to learn and learn and learn alongside us. By one time, they're going to come back in as a lead to us and say, like, we'd love to talk to you. May they still go to our competitors? Yes. But do we kind of have a relationship because they've been learning with us along the way? We totally do, right? It makes impact. But I think your leaders, like if you're like social selling is crap, but what do we do still here? Get your leaders posting on LinkedIn, right? That's exactly what we've just seen that line of business skyrocket for us because people are like, well, shit, we're missing out. Our
Mm.
competition's here or they're not, and we have a competitive advantage. I think the other thing is our buyers aren't on LinkedIn. Wrong. Even if your buyers aren't on LinkedIn, their buying teams probably are. They're
Yeah.
influencers, they're cross-functional partners. Like get your voice out and your brand out there. It's the easiest thing you can do for brand visibility. And final thing I'll say, go and just sweep some of the top prospects you want to get in front of, right? Like one of the CROs of the credit reporting agencies that we work with posts about like her outfits and her kids. Like she doesn't post about really nerdy financial stuff. She posts about that. Go engage. The head of data at Wells Fargo, data and analytics, she posts about puppies and about like living in New York through 9/11. Nobody comments on her stuff. And that's the other great thing. Sorry, one more thing. Executives get so much engagement on their post, hundreds of likes, and then like six comments.
Yeah.
Nobody talks to them. Go build a list, go talk to them. I promise it pays off.
Tom, you've built a reputation for yourself and obviously approached LinkedIn in a really, really different way. T Tell us a bit about your perspective on this.
Yeah, well, to your question, what holds people back? I think, and no offense to the people in this room, but it's seeing, your Jen Allen-Knuths and your Sam McKennas and your Aaron Evans who are so knowledgeable that you think, how could I possibly have a perspective, right? In the US, it's called imposter syndrome. In the UK, it's called I feel like a bit of a prat, right?
Mm,
That's what we call it. And what I coach on, and this is something I like to empower people, is that you don't have to be the voice of the solution and have all the answers. You can actually just be the voice of the problem. And
mm,
when you do that, something amazing happens. And it happened to me a few years ago. People start to give their opinion.
mm.
Amazingly, on your content, when people give their opinion, the comments start to go up, your engagement goes up, your impressions go up. Next thing you know, people are calling you a sales influencer. Like I really do believe that it's about being a conduit for the conversation and not thinking, yeah, I have to have all the answers. Actually, you can just start conversations, get people talking, because amazing things can happen when you start actually speaking to people.
Yeah, really, I agree. I totally agree. And I think we see it all the time is the reps like, what do I have to talk about? It's like you have hundreds of conversations every day about what's going on in your market. You've got opinions that you don't even know you've got opinions on. It's not even about do I share them with my customers and potential customers. You have an obligation as a seller to be a consultant and go, listen, Mr. CEO, Mrs. CEO, you're not on the phone to the market every day. I am. Here's what I am seeing. Are you aware of this? It should be an obligation, not a choice. Jen, over to you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
So
hot there, I'm a bit passionate, sorry.
plus one to Sam's comment. I think it's absolutely wild to think of any executive who does not want to have a presence on LinkedIn now. It makes zero sense to me, but I'm sure there's a case to be made somewhere. But Sam's work there is incredible. Plus one to Tom. That was the entire reason why I built the role of chief evangelist at Challenger. Because when I looked at what we were doing in the market, I was like, all right, sales is out here talking about our solution, marketing's out here talking about our solution. Ain't no one talking about the problem. We're just
Mm,
hoping people see the problem the way we want them to. And the leads suggested that they didn't because we were getting a really low volume of leads. So when I started on LinkedIn, I did exactly what Tom is talking about. Like I wasn't actually trying to social sell. I always describe it as like social sparking. I was just trying to spark a dialogue around a problem because I think there's a reason why therapy is as big of a business as it is. People love talking about their problems. And when you talk about a problem and someone rushes to say, well, I've got the great answer for you, we're not ready for that. I don't want to do that yet. I want to make sure you understand how this problem is uniquely playing out for me. And so when I just started doing what Tom described and said, let me go out there and just talk about the deals I've lost because I screwed up thinking I was with the right champion and I missed all these really obvious characteristics that I should have seen, and now here's what I look for instead. It's like that's what activates people to kind of relate to you because nobody wants to talk to the person who's perfect and doesn't get anything wrong, and nobody wants to talk to the person who's just yelling into the void that you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. So when we put ourselves out there and just say, look, this is a really human problem,
mm.
and here's what I used to think, now here's what I believe instead, that's where I think you get dialogue. And dialogue right now, I think, is the biggest thing that's challenging. It's like, how do I just get someone to engage and have a back and forth with me? So I could
I
not agree more.
I have such a just important point on this too. Like one of the clients we were talking about, like sharing these failures and these successes and things like that. There was a discomfort, which I think a lot of people feel about talking about themselves, and he said, like, nobody cares what I did. Like, I want to tell them what to do. I want to tell them how to get promoted. I want to tell them how to get a job, these things. And we said, well, if you just say, go do this, you now become a prick in your ivory tower telling them what to do.
Yeah.
They don't want to know what to do. They want to know what worked and failed for you. They want to be you one day. So you have to share those vulnerable stories, right? And I think sometimes people will cannonball into the deep end doing this and be like, I'll share anything and everything. And other people are like, I'm very buttoned up. I work for an old boys club, a massive company. I have to be very prim and proper. And then they slowly start to share. They get feedback where people are like, this was what I needed to hear. This was so inspiring. I feel like you're a human being where I didn't feel that way before.
Mm.
And then you slowly start to let it out. So like different speeds for everybody, but talk about it in from your stories, not from the seat of the CEO.
Really good point. Really, really good point. And Jen, you've caused an epiphany in the room as well. I think Stephanie's just said she's had an aha moment. Hopefully she doesn't move to sort of Vietnam to go and find herself or something, because there's a real enlightening happening in the room. Good for you, Stephanie, and good for you, Jen, for bringing that to the group as well. And the irony of Challenger not talking about the problem as well. Who would have thought that, eh? Christ almighty.
Hey,
Okay,
hey.
I'm now going to challenge you all three of you, in fact. Um, I'm going to remove your brand, I'm going to remove your experience, and I'm going to give you a computer. I'm going to give you your voice, and you've got to start from scratch to build a pipeline, a brand, a network, a referral program. What are you going to do? What channels are you going to use? How are you going to go about doing it? And bear in mind, when Sam posts now, as an example, she'll get 300 people liking her post just because of the expertise and the equity that she's built up with her audience. Let's take that away. What are you going to go and do?
I think for me, I always say that like you only need a few things to be dangerous in order to succeed in sales, right? So give me my territory, give me LinkedIn, give me email, and give me something that allows me to do email cadences, right? Like a sales loft, and then give me Sales Navigator, and that's about all I need. So I think also again we make all this stuff harder than we need it to be. Instead of thinking about the lowest hanging fruit ways to go and get business. So even if you are a party of one when you're starting out, right? Or you're working for a startup that has three executives. Who do your executives know? Where did they work before? Where did you work before? Who can you find as common threads that now work in a territory that you're going after? That's the most beautiful thing about Sales Navigator. It's like your personal Siri or Alexa or whatever the hell you want it to be for your territory. So just go be smart about those searches. Go and see, like if we have three customers, right? Did anybody used to work for these companies that now goes and works in my territory? Can I find those people? Use brand recognition, even if they weren't our buyers. Do they know that we existed? Like, make this easy on yourself. That low hanging fruit is there. And I think prospecting, especially, is easy. So if I have those things, right, and just a little bit of breathing room, I'll be successful. Yeah.
On this point, Sam, and then we'll come to our other two panelists. Are there any channels that you'd utilize that people aren't utilizing enough at the moment?
I think it really is LinkedIn. I think people just don't make the effort and they don't know what to do. They see LinkedIn as a an opportunity to pitch slap
Mm.
and just go in, connect, and then say buy my stuff. And again, just real world, just everything that you do in sales, go and put that in the real world. Would you walk up to 17 people at a conference, be like, "Hello, my name is Sam. I would like to sell you my stuff."
Yeah.
If you do, let's have a chat. And if you don't, then why would we do that on LinkedIn? But it really is that. And I think too, it's like it's hard to build process around that. Like, where do I even start? What do I do? Like, there are a few key things. Like, look at my content, and you'll see exactly mapped out how to do that and how to run those plays. Go buy our prospecting playbook on our website. I'll tell you exactly what to do from day one. But I think people underutilize that, or they just don't use it in the right way.
Perfect. Good plug as well. I saw that plug. Well played, Sam. That was impressive. Jen, over to you.
Yeah, I think so. The first place I'd want to go, I'm going to assume like I'm totally brand spanking new. I'm going to customer case studies, not to look at the after. I'm going to look at the before because what I want to understand deeply is what is the pain? What was the trigger point that caused someone to decide they actually need to action on that pain? Then I'm going, if we've got like a call recording software, back to clients that bought from us, back to clients that did not buy from us that fit our ICP. And I'm going to try to learn like what are the things, what is the way in which they speak so I can mirror their problem language. Then number two, like again, every industry is a little bit different, but if your prospects tend to be big Reddit users, right? Then I want to go to Reddit channels. I want to keyword search for the problem that my solution solves and see what are all the different ways that clients are out there talking about how they solve the problem today. Maybe I go to Slack channels. Like I always say this, like if I was selling Zoom Info or Apollo, I would just live in freaking sales community Slack channels because it's nonstop. People are going back and forth. So I'd want to know what are my clients and prospects saying about the problem? What are they saying about the other options? Because I think this is where we as organizations tend to drop the ball for our people is we give them product training and then we're like, we cannot wait to put them into the motion of calling and emailing and doing all the things when in fact, like we just don't have the level of problem acumen that we probably should. So I would want to slow down. I'd start there. And then I would do every single thing Sam just said, right? And just LinkedIn, of course, to me, I'm going in and I'm adding my 100 connections a week to say, what can I learn by what they're posting? What events are they going to? Who are they following? Who are they commenting on? Like, I just think we can slow it down and learn so much more about our buyers so that when we do start speaking up, when we do start sending emails, we actually have something meaningful to say and it sounds like they talk instead of sounding like a sales rep.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a large part of my career in sales enablement, and it never fails to amaze me how much training, how much resource, how much content we've got towards our product. But then you ask them, where's the training on personas? Where's the training on the problem that you actually solve? And it's like we don't have the IP even in the organization to talk about that, let alone for the enablement team to go and start doing rigorous training around this and certification around it as well. I think this is part of the problem now where everything's so feature function and product focused. But to your point, I love that. Like go to the case study and find out what was the problem that they're actually trying to solve in the first place. That's brilliant. Before we go to Tom, we'll dedicate the last 10 minutes or so for any questions that are that the attendees have. So feel free to start sending your questions through and our lovely panelists will start answering those as well. But Tom, over to you, mate. I know your answer is going to be different. What would you do?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, certainly, and again, we've already had a plug here, but getting a coach, right? Having someone that you can speak to and have a real conversation. Sometimes with a manager, you don't feel like you can speak to them on a certain level, especially if you're underperforming. Having the support there is obviously something I'm really championing at the moment. But secondly, embracing that you don't have all the answers. And I certainly, when I started in sales, tried to be the most knowledgeable person in the world. And with this accent, that's quite difficult, right? So I would just embrace, look, show that you're new to the role, to the industry. One of the best examples of this, and Aaron, you know my ex-colleague Charlie Johnson.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
Started at SalesLoft, and a couple of months before that she even started, she put a post out on LinkedIn that said, "Hey, sales leaders, I've never sold to sales leaders before. Does anyone want to jump on a call and tell me what it's like out there, right? I'm not going to sell you anything because this is research, but how does that sound?" Unsurprisingly, she got about five opportunities from that. A lot of people became customers, and it's because she led with kind of truth and transparency. I
Mm,
want to learn more about what your day to day looks like. And again, it goes right back to what we said at the top of the call. Sometimes just having the conversation, the back and forth can lead to the solution, but you need to start with the problem.
spot on. Absolutely spot on. And it's a good job that Todd Capone's not in the room with all this talk of truth and transparency as well. You're probably getting a bit hot under the collar when you said that, mate. It's his thing.
But I
Okay.
owe him a dollar, even if it's said like in my presence. So now, thanks, Tom. I have to pay him back. Can I go back to one quick thing that Jen said too? Like going back to those customer stories, if you're a brand new rep, think about that. Like you're looking at that problem, write an email to think like how would you bait that customer into solving that challenge? Like even if you didn't sell them, just say like, I'd love to pick your brain and say, would this email work for you? Do you sell to a title that's internal at your company? Like we used to sell to CMOs. So I wrote an email and I said, here's my value proposition about about what we solve. Would that work for you? And our CMO was like, this is bullshit. And I was like, oh, okay. And so start from scratch. Go to the person you're selling to for the product you both represent and ask them, does this work? Am I not getting to it? Ask your customers that. Befriend somebody, even if you haven't sold to them, and ask, like, if you're not getting the resources you need from your team, that's not an excuse. Go make it happen yourself.
Yeah, do you know you've hit on something really interesting there, and me and my co-founder Raf, who's in the call today, talk about this a lot. Is that we were really fortunate when we first started in selling for the company we worked for, where they made us sit down with every single department in the business and truly understand not only how a business works, but more importantly, how our customers' businesses work as well. Because the infrastructure is very, very similar throughout most businesses. And it feels like we've lost this business acumen of sellers knowing just basically how businesses work. So when they're talking to a sales leader or a head of finance or a head of HR or whatever the market is we sell into, they don't understand the ecosystem of not just their job, but how it affects the overall organizational goals and challenges, the OKRs that are associated with that. Those trigger words where you pick up, where you can go, look, we know this is going on in your industry at the moment. We know how this is affecting this and affecting that. That feels like that's gone. Feels like and it also feels like it's not coming back as well. I don't know if it's something that you guys see as well.
Raise your hand if you have ever invited, if you are a senior executive and you've ever invited your sellers to sit in on a meeting of how budgeting works, decisions are made, how you work with cross-functional partners to take budgets, or if you've ever sat in on that meeting. No, no one. We don't even teach our reps like how, like, take away the veil, like show them how business works, right? Talk about the way you make decisions. When they say we don't have budget, what's the real thing they're thinking about there? How do I push back and say, how do we find budget from other places? And Jen and Tom, have you ever sat in on meetings like that? I sure as hell haven't.
No, I always tell the story that it took 17 years into my sales career before I was in a buying group. And then when I was in a buying group for something that wasn't even that expensive, I was like, oh my gosh, this is why I lost all these deals. Because you just, as a salesperson, it's like trying to explain a movie that you've never seen, but you've heard a little bit about. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can kind of hit on some of the points, but you don't really nail it. And I think that's something like I've had some clients lately who've said, smaller clients say we'll have a sales rep shadow from start to finish like a piece of tech that we're buying so they can see all the conversations that happen when the sales rep's not in the room. Larger companies will say we'll do a case study of it. So who was the first person in the business to bring it up? Where did they hear about it? What did the person who objected to it say, and why did they? And I think when you can really start to give sellers that type of internal view of what it's like to be a buyer, then we can start looking at our own actions and say, my gosh, of course they're not reading my 40-page slide deck that's all about our product. Of course they're not using that in the meeting with the CFO.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. We don't give sales reps that context that will actually help them in the long run. We've had loads of questions come through, by the way. Thank you for putting them through. We've got one here from Hisham, which is there are so many good takeaways in here. Great job, guys. For scalability, how would you start a cold call pitch personalization? General human conversation problem trigger learning position. Sorry if I butchered that, but essentially, how would you start from a cold position? What would you do? Should we do a role play? Over to you, Sam.
Oh, great. Thanks.
No, I'm joking, I'm joking. Anyone could go for it.
Jen, what do you think? I think like this is your area of expertise too. Anything you have?
Listen, I would never say cold calling is my area of expertise. I'm definitely more of a cold email gal. However, one of the openers I really like, I learned from the 30 Minutes to President's Club guys, which is this is a well-researched phone call. Would you give me just whatever many seconds of time? I don't know to tell you why I reached out. And I think what that does is it then puts the seller in the hot seat to prove to that buyer, I have a valid reason for contacting you and contacting you now. So like, I also want to be realistic. I've never sold SMB. I probably will never sell SMB. Like I'm speaking from an enterprise mid-market perspective. I just don't ever like want to be in a world where we're just like winging it with enterprise CIOs. Like I just think there's too much to lose in those situations, which is why I like that opener.
Tom, before I break everybody's hearts, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think it's about leading with honesty, right? It's about referencing that you're making a cold call, right? Even sort of calling someone up and saying, "Hey, I've got a pitch here, can I reel it off for you?" Like nobody says that, right? Everyone tries to hide hide their pitch, but leading with honesty and sometimes brutal honesty has certainly done me well in the past. Also linking it to like your brand, right? So lines I've used in the past. I'm Tom Boston. I've been making content for 5 years on LinkedIn. Have you ever heard of me? If they say yes, I've got a nice conversation. If they say no, I can say, okay, I'm clearly not doing as good as I thought, right? Either one of those responses, hopefully, will either raise a smile or lead to a further conversation. And I think that is key, right? Cold calling is not about trying to pitch. It's actually just trying to get a positive response because hey, what if you had a positive response, but then the call has to end quite abruptly, that's fine. Next week, when you have another call, maybe you'll have a better conversation. So for me, it's about positive outcomes over meetings booked, pitch made perfect.
I think you just missed one word, hilarious content on LinkedIn. Have you heard of me? I think that would be even more disarming, hopefully, and self-deprecating. I think my perspective is I've never, and this angers people, but I've never made a cold call in my career. And I think like to me, it's just like it is a manners thing for me. I know. It's just a manners thing, right? I'm originally from Switzerland. Manners were like driven into me from the day that I was born. And I just like, it's not an uncomfortable thing. I feel so rude calling somebody in the middle of their day unannounced and being like, hello, I would like to sell you something. And they're like, I bet you would. Even if I use those lines, it's just not me. But that's the beautiful thing about sales, is you might have never sent a goddamn email in your life. And the only thing you've done is cold call. You take what works for you, the bits of the advice that are authentic and resonate with you, and make them work, right? So I do believe that I can earn the right to that meeting if I approach them in a different way, LinkedIn and email, and continue to educate them along the way and
Mm.
hopefully be different and make that effort. But I love that line, Tom, and I love the line from President's Club, 30 Minutes to President's Club too. This is well researched, and then like, oh shit, it better be well researched.
Yeah, really good stuff. Hopefully that helps you, Hisham, with your question. We've got another one here as well, and it's around larger sales cycles. Any advice you give, speaking advice you give in longer sales cycles, would you suggest to push them, hopefully not physically, or let them come around at their own pace? I've got some perspectives on this, but no one's turned up from my perspective. I'll hand straight over to you guys.
I definitely would not push them. This is a mistake I made a lot,
Oh,
is I was trying to get people on my timeline, like, oh, we'll give you this discount or we'll do this. Enterprise sales cycle, big ticket items are going to move at the pace that they want to move, full stop. And I think where I try to spend my time is, what are the anticipated roadblocks I think that they will run up against based on my conversations with other places, and how can I help them run interference on those before it happens? So to be very specific, like if someone's like, great, I'm going to take this over to our CIO to take a look at. I will want to intentionally slow them down. Old Jen would be like, great, let's have a call the next day and see how it went and talk about the proposal. Now I'm like, you know what? If I may, there's usually four things that skeptical CIOs will bring up when you present this to them. Do you mind if we just take a few minutes and we talk through those? Because I can share some of the things that my other previous clients did that worked, and some things that didn't work, so you don't fall into those same traps, right? So my job is to coach them so I can likely reduce or minimize some of those roadblocks, but trying to steamroll them through it like never got me anywhere very fast.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I like to say that there are no sales cycles, there are only buying cycles. Your job is to understand the uncontrollables and control the controllables. It's that simple. You can't force someone into buying something, particularly now. 11 stakeholders involved in a B2B buying decision. If you turn around to them and said, we're going to give it away for free, they still couldn't make a decision because it's so complex buying things. We're going to wrap things up very soon. I'm going to do a quick plug. If you've liked this, follow Flow State, follow me, go to the website, sign up to our newsletter. But for our guests, if they want to get hold of you, I'm guessing the answer is LinkedIn. But if they want to find out your content, learn more about you, have a conversation with you, or buy your course, Sam, for that matter, we'll start with you. How can they go and do it?
come over to samsalesconsulting.com. We have a great newsletter that comes out on Friday, super funny. We have webinars, women's leadership groups. We have a lot of stuff that we do for totally free. So come and hang out with us, and definitely say hello on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us, Sam. Over to you, Jen.
Yep, same thing. LinkedIn, Jen Allen-Knuth, or if you go to demandgenwithaj.com, I have a newsletter that I started doing on Sundays. So if you are finding it a little rougher to do cold emails, I rewrite a cold email every week and talk about why I changed what I changed. So you can submit your cold email. I'll rewrite it, Might not be the best in the world, but at least gives you a different take on it.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And if you like dogs as well, make sure you follow Jen's LinkedIn because she puts some brilliant dog pics up there every
Thank
Saturday,
you.
I believe. Tom, over to you.
Well, I'm quoting here. This is Sam McKenna. Hilarious content every every single week. There's not a lot of bald Tom Bostons on LinkedIn, so I'm quite easy to find. And when you follow me, you'll get prompted to subscribe to my newsletter. 27,000 people are surviving sales every week with my LinkedIn newsletter. So I'd love to get you involved in that.
Amazing. Well, firstly, thank you very much for our panelists today, but I actually want to thank the guests who turned up. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. Hopefully, there's been some really actionable insight in there. If you want the recording, it will be on the Flow State website and we'll send it out via the newsletter. And if you want to get some extra information from the guys, reach out to them as well. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and I bid you a good day. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, you
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye, everyone.